looking for that extra chromosome.
Hello, and welcome to the If We Knew Then podcast. I'm Steven Sachs.
And I'm Lori Sachs.
And today we're joined by Lauren Costabile from Hearts of Joy International.
She's the founder of Hearts of Joy International. They provide life-saving heart surgeries to children with Down syndrome all over the world. They also provide resources and supports here in the U.S., including my favorite, the baby shower. In this episode, we talk about the ripple effect of each of our lives, how connected we all are, and how each of us has the ability to change the world for the better. Welcome, Lauren.
Lauren, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I came across you on the internet and read like 2 lines about your organization and just was enthralled and so curious. So I'm so glad you can join us.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I'm happy to be here.
You want to start by telling everybody a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Lauren, and I'm from New Jersey, and I am the founder of Hearts of Joy International. So we're a 501c3 nonprofit, and we provide heart surgery for children with Down syndrome. So this is what I've been doing for the past almost 3 years now. And it's both very challenging and very fulfilling and beautiful. So it keeps me busy for sure.
What inspired you to create this foundation?
So I have over 10 years experience working with the special needs population here in the States, so primarily in New York, New Jersey. And I've always had a special passion in particular for individuals with Down syndrome. When I was 17, I volunteered at a special needs camp as a counselor, and they just kind of stole my heart in a way that was just I didn't expect it because I hadn't had much experience before that. And after that camp, I kind of sought out opportunities to work with this population. And I changed my major in college. I studied recreational therapy, and it was always something that was really interesting to me. And then about 5 years ago now, I went to Uganda and I visited a friend who lives there. I was there for about a month. And I'm always very curious about how the Down syndrome community is treated in other parts of the world. I have been very blessed to be able to do mission work before that. So I went to places like Nicaragua, and I saw places where there are people with disabilities living in impoverished areas and there's not many resources for them. So that's kind of what I thought would be in Uganda, but it wasn't until I physically went there that I was stunned by what I saw, that not only were there no resources available for people with Down syndrome, but they're not treated like the rest of society because they're looked down upon as less than because they have a disability. And I tell everyone you can't unsee something. And for me, that was something that I just said, like, I really feel called to do something to help. They're not seen for the gift that they are. And I'm going to change that. So it's a big undertaking, but there's much more to that story. But that's kind of like what inspired me to do something in that particular area to start Hearts of Joy.
So is Hearts of Joy just primarily in Uganda?
So it started in Uganda, and now we work in India, the Philippines, Mexico, and right here in the States, we do counseling and helping to provide resources for pregnant mothers who get the diagnosis of Down syndrome and a heart defect. So we're in a lot of countries, and yeah, it's been great.
I want to revisit what you do in the States with the diagnosis because that's something that's very important to me personally. But I want to talk more about what you do in the other countries. You said the one thing that struck you was seeing that the community with special needs, primarily or more specifically Down syndrome, that they're treated like less than and not valued.
Yeah, so because Down syndrome is physical, you can see physically that something is different with the child. They may not be able to articulate in Uganda or in these developing worlds that is Down syndrome. And therefore, there's a huge lack of understanding of what the condition is. But they can say, you're different. And so therefore, we're going to treat you. It's almost like we're not going to treat you like a human being. And so you're not going to get the resources you deserve. You're definitely not going to get medical care. And sometimes you won't even get love from your own family, which is really sad. And it's become a huge part of our program to advocate not only for the child, but to build advocates in the parents and to empower them, because I tell everyone, it's like when you tell someone over and over, any human being in any part of the world, you're not good enough to do something, if that narrative is repeated, you're going to think after a while, you know what? Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm not good enough, or maybe I can't do this. And that's kind of culturally what's been said to these people over and over and over again. Like, we don't want to touch that. We don't want to go there. We don't know anything about this. Like, you're not going to be able to do it. It's almost similar narrative here in the States. Sometimes we can get a prenatal diagnosis, but it's like we come in and we teach them, no, like, this is not your fault. This is how this happened. And this child is actually a gift. And they're going to teach you something of value that you would never be able to learn any other way aside from parenting this child. And it's a beautiful thing. And we're going to walk by you. We're going to help you. We're going to give you tools to be able to be that parent that you're meant to be for this child. And also, like, people with Down syndrome are the greatest, and they're such like little loves, and you're going to get so much joy and love from them. And it's just that flip when a parent finally realizes like what we're saying is true, even though it's hundreds of years of a different narrative. It's really like one of my favorite moments is when that parent realizes, okay, like there is something to this, because they want to love their child. They do. It's just they're fighting a culture that tells them, why bother? And so it's almost like very foreign to us here sometimes, or it can be, but even not. Like I said, with the prenatal diagnosis, I think we can all kind of understand that it's very isolating. And it's become a huge part of our program, that counseling piece, to really educate people on the reality of what Down syndrome is, how it occurs, and how to take care of the child in the best way possible. So we provide the surgery, but we also like walk with the family and help them to know that they're not alone in this process.
What I find so interesting is when you're talking about going to another country and how you see that this community is looked upon as not equal, it's not much different in the United States. And I don't think I would know that until I had a child with Down syndrome. But the truth is, everything that you're saying as far as the narrative that's been given to parents, I feel like it's changing recently for the Down syndrome community, but that is the narrative that's still told to parents of children with Down syndrome, and also told to children with Down syndrome and adults with Down syndrome. So it isn't really much different. I just think that for me to experience it in this country where we live, it was shocking to me. The lack of support or education, the push for testing for this one chromosome, the dialogue that's spoken to mothers prenatal in the midst of their pregnancy or right after giving birth. It does definitely plant the seeds, those same seeds of having a life that's less value. And then you do see it in our culture. Like I
Yeah,
said,
and you mentioned culture, and that's a word you used, Lauren. It is an ingrained thing. There's assumptions about Down syndrome, even in this country, that need to almost be proven to be false for people to actually understand the truth. And it is cultural. If it's the word cultural or narrative, it's here too.
and it's really prevalent. If you go on any of the message boards on social media, you see, and I think, like I said, it is changing. So when you get the parents who are now getting diagnosis, but they're dealing with maybe their parents or their grandparents, and they're being fed that same belief of, this life is worth less, or, what did you do? Or, there's so many things that are so untrue and still filtered down. And until those conversations that are untrue stop, then I think that's when this community will be most empowered, because all the negative misinformation is, I think, really what's creating the boundaries in the community.
You're so right. And I think across the board globally, we've made so much progress in so many areas, and yet we can always be better. And I think what you just said struck me about like people asking when they get the prenatal diagnosis or wanting to talk to other people, that community is key. That understanding from a family perspective of having this type of child yourself, knowing like, no, that narrative that we're being fed is actually incorrect. It's completely false. And I always like to share like about like the ripple effect, like, because I see that in my work, and it's even what you're describing. It's like that. I believe that that's the way that we change it, is one person at a time and by our own personal experiences. And there's so many narratives that we're being fed that are just blatantly untrue. And the only way to fix that, I think, is with our own personal stories. And I think that that's really impactful of like the truth of like, no, these children are a gift, and they're beautiful, and they deserve to be here like anyone else.
You were saying, like, for instance, when you're in Uganda and a family has a child with Down syndrome, I'm assuming that you see from either birth or older, like families who have children with Down syndrome. Do they not have a word for the diagnosis? Is there the lack of the education of what the diagnosis is?
Yes. So sometimes they will be diagnosed at birth and sometimes they won't. It just kind of depends on the location, because the reality is that not all these children are even born in a hospital. Most of our families live in the villages, and so they don't have access to a hospital. Some of them are giving birth on their own land in their backyard. And so the reality is that unless there's a problem, unless the child presents some kind of symptom of, speaking about the heart defect, like has a cough or has trouble breathing, then they'll say, okay, I think we need to take them to a hospital. And so sometimes our kids are diagnosed when they're like 6 months old, 2 months old, when they finally go to a hospital. And then other times, if they are born in a hospital or clinic or medical facility, they will be diagnosed at birth. But the issue is that that's it. And they just say trisomy 21. They don't say Down syndrome, but then they don't explain, well, what is trisomy 21? It's just a vague diagnosis, and they don't associate the heart defect with that diagnosis. So it's kind of, yeah, it's kind of like a circle of like lack of education and just lack of resources. Like these people are not always able to just get up and go to a hospital, even if their child is sick. So it's kind of a multiple of things, but it's not really talked about, and there's a huge lack of, yeah, understanding for what that even means. We come in and we say trisomy 21 and Down syndrome are the same thing. And then we explain the chromosome, the extra chromosome, and what does that mean? A lot of the mothers blame themselves and think that they did something, because they're very superstitious culture. So they think that they did something or the father did something. And we just tell them that no, this is a chromosomal issue that happened at conception, and this is the child you've been given. And so there's a lot of education to be done. And once it's repeated and kind of, like I said, we start to change that narrative, people are receptive because they want to know the truth. They seek that, they desire that. They just have never, is very foreign to them. They want the answers, they want to know, so it's a very interesting experience. But yeah, I believe that education is everything, and I want to be educated. I'm constantly learning more about how we can better serve these people, and in trying to put myself in that situation and what would I want to know. And so hearing from mothers like who have children and know what that feels like is super valuable to us. And we have like a strong community of people that we refer families to if they want to meet a child with Down syndrome once they get the diagnosis, if they're here in the States, all that kind of stuff. And our families in other countries, we like introduce them to each other. And it like I talk about that ripple effect again, because it's like we'll send a group of kids to India for surgery from Uganda, and then they'll go back home and they'll be in their village, and then like they'll go and tell their neighbor, and then their neighbor will realize, oh, I think my cousin's baby has Down syndrome, and then they'll apply to our program. And it's always so beautiful how that works. And like I said, that's how it shifts. It's one person at a time, and it might be like a slow process, but that's how you make a real change, I believe.
Well, of course, education is very important. When I think of the surgeries that we really take for granted in the United States, being able to provide that for someone that doesn't have the resources that we have here, that's saving lives. And how many have been sponsored through your organization to have heart surgeries?
So since 2019, we have done 35 heart surgeries in 4 countries. So it's been beautiful. And even during this past year, we've still been able to heal hearts amidst the pandemic, which is something that we're very proud of. Our team in these countries that have worked tirelessly amidst all of these challenges that, these new challenges that are presented, and they're still able to, yeah, save lives and heal hearts. So we're very, very happy about that. And we've certainly adapted the program as countries shut down and borders close and cases rise and all these things. But our kids are so resilient, and there's always a way. We make a way, and we really fight for these kids. So we're really happy to still be able to do that during this time.
And tell us the countries again that this program is available in.
Yeah, so Uganda, India, the Philippines, and Mexico.
Now, do they have to be from those countries or do they just have to get to that country?
So they have to be from those countries. A part of our program is, or the way it's structured is, we want to treat patients in their own country. That's the goal, so that they speak their language and culturally it's the same, and there's a better understanding when it's in their own country. Now in Uganda, it's simply not feasible because of the level of care that's available there. And so we do fly the kids from Uganda to our hospital in India, as well as our complex cases from the Philippines, we fly to India. And so it's kind of like a little loop around, just because there's better care there and it's safer. Because with Down syndrome, there's a lot of complexity that goes along with that. And so the recovery is longer than a typical child. And so there are just different things that are not available in their own country with the Ugandans, but we really push for that. So our patients in Mexico are being treated in Mexico. Our patients in the Philippines are being treated in the Philippines. And so, because there are structures in place and very well-trained doctors that are able to perform the surgeries, they need that extra like push, and they need that extra connection. And we kind of just fill in the blanks for them and connect that all for them. So we work very closely with the team of doctors and the healthcare team in the hospitals in each of those countries. We have a team of about like 15 people in each country that we work very closely with. So we wouldn't be able to do it without them. That's why we're able to continue amidst everything that's going on, because it's already established in their own countries for the most part.
And if somebody from one of those countries wanted to apply for your program, I know they can go online. I see there's an application they can fill out. It does say date of diagnosis. So if there's someone who has not received a diagnosis, is that something that they don't have to be dissuaded from if they got to that part of your application and they didn't have a diagnosis or they didn't have a cardiologist? That's something that you could just kind of explain and work through. And then also, I don't know, like internet wise, is there another way for them that we could put in our show notes that they would be able to reach Hearts of Joy?
Sure. So they can apply on our website, which is heartsofjoyinternational.com. There's a refer a child form if they have access to the internet, which most do, but not all. And most of our kids do have a diagnosis, which is the reason why they're contacting us. If it's by word of mouth, sometimes we'll get messages on our social media pages, which you can also message us on, and we can further the application and point you to how you can fill it out if you don't have access to the internet. And our social media pages are also Hearts of Joy International on Instagram and Facebook. And then we have a phone number as well, which is listed on our website. Sometimes because of international fees and all these things, that's not really the route that a lot of our people take. And then we do have contacts on the ground. So if someone we work with partner organizations in each country. So actually often a lot of our applications come in through referrals of other organizations that call us or send us an email. And you could also email us at info@heartsofjoyinternational.com. So there are several ways to get in touch with us. We're very responsive in whatever way you want to reach us, whatever works for you. We're not lacking in applications. We actually have a wait list currently because of everything that's going on in the world. And so people find a way to contact us, or the word travels fast. Again, that ripple effect, once you put it out in the universe, it really does travel fast. And so, yeah, there's multiple ways to get in touch with us.
When you talk about that ripple effect to contact people, how did it start? Like, what was the first connections with Children of Need? How did you really get the ball rolling at first?
Yeah, so it's funny because I thought that I would move to Uganda and kind of spend time going into the villages and like kind of looking for people. And that's just not the way it happened at all. So when I was explaining to you that I went and I visited the community there, which is how it started, I met one baby in particular, and she was about 6 months old, which is the perfect age to get the surgery. And so I knew just by holding her that she had a heart defect because of the way that she was breathing. Her breathing was very labored, and she was having difficulty breathing. And so I came back to the States and I kept in touch with the family and my friend who lives there. And we were kind of scheming, and we got her to go to her parents to take her to the hospital, get an echo, heart scan. and she ended up having 3 holes in her heart. And so I started GoFundMe, and I made a video and I posted it on Facebook, and we raised money for that baby to get surgery. It was about $5,000 in Uganda at the time for this procedure. And this is where I was learning everything, which is why I structure the program the way that I do now. And we started raising over that amount. So I'm saying in my head, I'm like, what are we going to do with this extra money? Like, I didn't have the organization then. Here's that ripple effect again. So when I was there in Uganda, I had taught an educational course to a few mothers. I mean, like, no more than 10 people. And I had a translator, and I explained Down syndrome. I showed them photos of what it looks like, and I explained that it was global. It's not just people in Uganda, it's all over the world, different races, religions, all different types of people that have Down syndrome. It's so beautiful. And as we were raising this money, we're at like $7,000 for the one baby. And then the translator calls me and tells me I was out in a village, like probably 8 hours away from where I taught the course. And she says she found another baby with this condition because of what I described. I described that it's physical, the physical features. I described what to look for. And she said, I think we found another baby with Down syndrome, and she also has a heart defect. Like, can you help her? So it's like I said, once you put it out there, it just was like a ripple effect that just never, it hasn't stopped since. So I said, okay, yeah, let's get her checked. Let's get her to the hospital and see like if we can repair this. I ended up raising $10,000 for both of them to receive surgery. And then because of complications, the one baby was a little too old, they thought, for the operation. And so they thought that she was probably inoperable. She was about 2.5. And the other baby was really malnourished and very small at like 7 months old. And so the hospital in Uganda rejected them. And so I had to look elsewhere. And so I got in touch with someone in India, and that's kind of where it started with India. I was applying to all these organizations all over the world, and one of them helped us and brought us to India. And so that's where a light bulb went off, and I said, oh, like we could send them somewhere else. Like there's something else that we could do here. And so I brought both of the girls there. The little baby got her surgery, and the older one, unfortunately, did not. It turned out that she was inoperable. And so that's also where another light bulb went off and said, we have to do something to help more children like this, because it should never be because you didn't know that your child had this condition that they weren't able to receive care. And that's what happened to that child. She was too old. She aged out. Her heart defect became life-threatening before the family was aware. And so that's kind of like the beginnings of Hearts of Joy. I started the organization right after this. And like I said, the applications have not stopped since. I've never had to find someone. They're constantly contacting us. And I partnered with multiple organizations in each of these countries. And so they refer people. And like I said, it hasn't stopped in almost 3 years. So that's kind of how people are brought to us. I always say that like they're literally brought to us, and it's just the children that we're meant to help.
What made that child at 2.5 inoperable?
Yeah, so 50% of children born with Down syndrome will have a heart defect. So that heart defect is a hole in the heart or multiple holes. So where the hole is located will determine what type of surgery the doctors can do to correct it. So sometimes we have to fully open the heart, and that's mainly what we do, the full open heart. You have to close the hole. And then sometimes we can do something called a catheter procedure, where they put a device through a small tube in their leg through a catheter, and it plugs the hole. So it just depends on the area, whether it's in the chambers or the valves or the wall, like where it's located in the heart. The issue is that once the child turns about 6 months or later, the holes start to get larger sometimes they don't. But if they are large, or sometimes there'll be like 2 large one and 1 small one, or something of that effect if there's multiple. And what happens is the blood flow is not going in the proper parts of the body. And so the blood is flowing into the lungs, and it causes a condition called pulmonary hypertension, where the fluid is filling the lungs. And at some point, it becomes irreversible. So you can't repair the lungs without the heart failing, and you can't repair the heart without the lungs failing. And so that's why they deem a child inoperable. It's usually because of pulmonary hypertension. Their lung damage is too severe and it's irreversible. And that's unfortunately what happened to this child, and what happens to countless children if this is not taken care of at the proper time.
Yeah, this is what has been happening to and would have happened to the kids that you were able to connect to.
When you receive a diagnosis, there's certain tests that follow with Down syndrome. Is that really what we're going for? Is that parents can receive a diagnosis and then know what Down syndrome is and then be able to test for these things?
Absolutely. And also to associate that a person with Down syndrome has a high likelihood of having a heart defect. I know they could have a lot of other health complications, but this is one that is literally life threatening. And so that's part of our education, is to connect the two. Yes, to explain about Down syndrome and how to care for the child and check for all these other potential medical complications, but really to check their hearts and to tell the parents what to look out for. I mean, here in the States, when a child is born and they have Down syndrome and they get that diagnosis, they're going to be checked for all those things at the hospital. No one here is going to not be checked for that. They don't get that luxury in these other countries. And it's simply because, like I said, because of that stigma, they don't feel that it's important. Or maybe some of them don't even know that they should check that. But it's really that education piece in telling parents and families, and even educating doctors in different parts of the world, that Down syndrome is associated with the heart defect, and we need to check that as early as possible so that we can get the surgery and correct it and save the child's life.
I think really educating the medical profession that that life has a value, because I know that that isn't something that's necessarily the opinion of a lot of medical professionals, period.
Even here.
Yeah, that I'm talking about here. Like
Yeah,
there's just
I
like
can-
Absolutely.
there's still that archaic belief of that life is going to be a burden, that life will have no value, the quality of life, and all of those things. They really come from a time when our children were, like you said, a long time ago. Child would be born, they'd see it as different, they'd take it away, they'd put it in an institution, and then that life becomes limited because it will be a reflection of its environment. What doesn't hold is this is what we did to that life. What holds is this is what that life is. And it's not true. So I can only imagine in, just different parts of the world that having that education piece, I know that it's a challenge here. I don't know what that looks like in other places of the world, but I do think that just that value, just to get rid of that mindset that differences are burdens, that differences have less value.
Well, we've discussed a lot about, what do you do as an advocate? Where do you start? You start at what level, and how do you make an impact? And you talk about the ripple effect. You've said it many times. And I think about how just an overall experience with someone with Down syndrome, and that can start in TK, kindergarten, sometime in school, or in your neighborhood, that you come across someone and you learn about them. And that can be about a race or Down syndrome or what have you, different cultures.
Any difference, right?
Any difference. And you don't know someone that's different than you, and then they're just not part of your life and part of your community. So we need to actively learn more about each other.
In addition to the support and the heart surgeries, you say you go into the communities and educate on what the diagnosis is. Is that something that you still do? You still offer?
Yes, we also are present for the heart surgery, the entire process. So when we send a patient to another country, like when we send them to India, our team travels with them. And so we're with them through the entire process. We're breaking down what the surgery means, the fact that their child's going to have breathing tubes and all these things, kind of desensitizing them so that they're able to cope with it better, the parents. And we do that in every country. So there is like pre-education, and there's the education during, and they're able to, it's about developing relationships with these people. And so once they trust us, and they realize that we're doing what we say we're doing, and we mean what we say, and we're for real, and we develop that trust, then they're open to asking us any questions along the way. And then we do follow-ups as well. About 6 months after the procedure, we'll go and visit the family, and we're in constant communication with them. We get messages all the time from kids we did 2 years ago, or the very first batch of kids we ever did in the Philippines. Those mothers still reach out to us and send us updated pictures. It's like just such a beautiful thing to see the child growing. Like some of our kids are like, oh gosh, like 5 or 6 years old now. It's just so cool. And before everything shut down and all of this craziness, we were able to make a trip back to the Philippines, and we visited like 20 of our patients that we had done prior, and they're all like so big now, and they're walking, they're talking, like some of them are in school. Like it was just so beautiful to see. Really cool.
Oh, I love that. I love that they're in school.
Oh, yes.
And when you said cool, I was thinking the whole time, this is so cool, because really when it comes down to it is, we're on this mortal coil for just such a short period of time, and what kind of effect, we'll just call this the ripple effect. What can we start? What's our ripple effect of our life? Even if it was just one surgery, one person, because that person has a family, who has a community, who has a village, and it's just so beautiful and cool to have this be your life. Like, this is what you do. You go in and you help people. You help people live, because, I can only imagine the end to the story of the 2.5-year-old who wasn't able to get the surgery. And that's really hard. But for that one, you have so many others whose parents don't experience that. And then also the difference that you're making in these countries as to how they see Down syndrome and the reality of what it is. Because honestly, no matter where you are, there are people who still believe. When our son was born, someone told Stephen that he was a good person. He didn't deserve this. Like, he hadn't done anything wrong. And it was like, but it's not about that. It's just a medical diagnosis. It's about the existence of an extra chromosome. That's all it is. It's not, there's nothing mystical about it. Just like if you had a broken leg, there's nothing mystical about it. This is what it is. And this is how we fix it. And this is what we do to support it. And that's it. It's just a part of us. And how you're empowering that change, because that change is the one that's going to have the longevity of the one that's needed. That conversation that before anybody knew this one child who now is amongst its community and going to school, what was their understanding of what even that was? And the parent can say, no, this is what it is. And that changes, that has such an impact. And I think it's so cool. I really think it's really great. I think that's why one of the things I love about this podcast is, sometimes in life, just anybody living their life, sometimes it can be hard and sometimes it can wear you down. But then when you get to meet people like you who are going out and changing the world the way it needs to be changed, it is really, really cool.
Oh, absolutely. I've seen with this job, because it can be very challenging at moments, because life and death are in our hands or before us. But yeah, you hit the nail right on the head. Like, what we do with our lives is important. And for me, with my particular skill set, the resources I have, this is just what I'm on this earth to do. This is how I'm called to love the world. And it really has been such a blessing. And I would take it all over again, even all the challenges and the difficulties that arise. And the second I look into one of these children's eyes, and like you said, I see them growing up and I see the joy from their families, it's completely worth it. It's a real joy.
Well, it's got to be a lot of work to coordinate everything, and I can only imagine if you have a wait list, you want this to happen to as many people as you can. You want it to happen as quickly as possible, because the quicker you can do it, the quicker you can get other kids in a safe time in their life. How much have you been able to stay hands-on? Do you get to travel and see the kids? How do you divide your time with the organization?
Yes, I do. I've been able to travel to every surgery, but yeah, it's my absolute favorite part, which is why I started this, the hands-on work of being able to be there with the families and comfort the child when they're about to go in for their surgery. And it's definitely my favorite part. But I also coordinate the entire program as well. And so it's been a lot to juggle, but I do have help, and we have volunteers and other employees and people that are working with us. And like I said, it's not possible without everyone else, and the donors and the people that are hands-on, and the nurses, and the anesthesiologists and the assistants and everyone in the OR and the surgeons. It's like this beautiful community that comes together to help this little life. And when they say like it takes a village, it truly does, because we can't do it alone. And I play my role and I do what I'm called to do in the situation. But I also recognize like I'm not the heart surgeon, and this could never go on without him or her. Understanding like your own skill set, not being afraid to reach out and ask for help in areas that we need, and working together in this community for that one common goal. We're going to save this child's life, and we're going to support their family through this situation.
And so we'll put the Hearts of Joy International website, that link in our show notes, and any other contact information you have. And then on that page, is there a place where people can donate?
Yes. So if you go to our website, you click on the donate page, you can donate right there, which is pretty easy to access. And you can also send us a check if you would prefer, and you can mail it to our P.O. box, which is also listed on our website. And like I said, we could never do this without the generosity of our donors. And when you donate to Hearts of Joy, you know exactly where your money is going, and we send you updates on the child, and you're literally helping to save their lives and make an impact that they maybe would not have had this opportunity if it wasn't for your generosity. So we're super grateful for anyone who feels inspired to give in that way and support us, and it helps us continue this work and our mission.
Well, it's good to make it easy, because that should be the easiest part, is the donation part. And I'm assuming you're an organization where that money is tax deductible for the donor.
Absolutely. Yes. You get a tax refund. So that's great.
Anything to get
Everybody
someone
wins.
to do it. Right.
And it's super cool.
Yeah.
It's super cool what you're doing. So I want to go back to when you said you started. What sparked this in your life? And you said that you began at an early age working with, was it children with special needs, or was it just all ages?
Children up to like 18 or 17, so up to high school age.
And this was all different disabilities?
Yes. But for me, I don't know. I just think that I have a special, like, I hate to be cliche here, but like heart-to-heart connection with people with Down syndrome in particular. It's funny because I think the people at the camp started to notice too, and I didn't even realize I had this gift until I went there. Or it was like by the end of the week, like all of the campers with Down syndrome and me were like sitting at the picnic tables having lunch together, like, and they were all leaving their groups, and we were kind of like this like little club. So I don't know, it's like kind of indescribable, this connection that I feel towards this community. And they find me too. It's funny. Like I'll be out somewhere, and I'll just meet a family with a child with Down syndrome, or I'll just start talking to them. And, it's just, it's a real gift.
There's no doubt that's a real thing. I mean, we've talked about it before, and something that comforts me, you care for your children and their welfare and their happiness. And one thing I can say is there's a percentage of people in the world that love Liam before even meeting him. Just there's something there, and it wasn't anything I had growing up. It wasn't anything that I was drawn to, but I know. I mean, we see it in public. People will come up to Liam and just love him, and wow, that's not a bad thing. That's great, and there's a connection, definitely.
Yeah, it's so beautiful, for sure.
There has to be something, because I think that the value of the life of someone with Down syndrome. And I have to think there has to be something in maybe your approach or the way you speak or the dignity that you have, because this is something, it's funny because this is something that as parents of someone with Down syndrome, it was a challenge. Like Stephen said, a lot of people just will love Liam just because he has Down syndrome. But some of that comes from a perception that is the same perception that we find as a challenge to break through, because that perception will sometimes cause the limits and boundaries that are put on him in education, because people will see him as this same way. And I have to think, because, what followed was you going into other countries to educate people on what Down syndrome is, that it is a medical diagnosis, that there are supports, and these lives do have value. I have to think that there has to be something about your conversation with them that is also life empowering and dignifying, and we can all suss out how people feel about us. We can all, like people may like me for a different reason, and the tone of their voice will indicate however they view me, right? And we can suss out when there's a person there that actually sees us. And I have to feel that must be present, that value for their life. Because what Stephen talks about isn't always the conversation. Like, it took us a very long time to realize it's still a really good thing.
It's great
that somebody loves your kid.
But I have
right?
to talk to Sophia about not talking to Liam all the time,
in a certain way.
In a certain way. Like,
right. But what I'm saying is it's two different things. It's like there's a person that will see a perception. That's the challenge for me as a parent, is when people see a perception of my child that isn't the totality of my child. What I feel from you is that you would see my child as
an equal life.
And yes, it's not always the conversation.
Right. Absolutely. And I think for me, it's that genuineness. Like, we all desire to be seen and loved, like you said, in our totality, no matter what is going on externally, internally. And that's kind of how I treat everyone in my life. And so why would I treat people with Down syndrome any different? And like you said, maybe that is how other people see them. And I do believe that they have a very beautiful gift of seeing like that in other people, like the genuineness of, if I really am like kind of BSing them or like just talking to them because they have that, or if I am really like a friend, or I want to be there just to say hi or get to know them. And that's, like I said, that's how I am with everybody in my life. I treat them all as equal because they are a human, and so they possess dignity and worth just because they were created. And I really believe that across the board. But it's funny because I'd love to share this story about that camp, which is what made me realize, like, I also want to strive to be more like a person with Down syndrome, or to have that kind of heart that sees that genuineness in others. Because so that very first day of camp, so I was 17 years old, a kid myself, didn't have any experience with people that were different than me. Like you said, I didn't know anyone. There was no one in my community that had special needs or Down syndrome. And I just had never been exposed to something like that. So I didn't know really what it was. My older brother had been doing this camp for years, so he would always tell me about it, but I never really understood it until I experienced it myself. So I was in a room with like over 100 people, and they were assigning counselors to campers. And I was pretty awkward, I'll admit it. I'm like standing in the corner by myself, like probably biting my nails, like, what am I doing here? Like, it was overwhelming. Kids were screaming, they were running around. And I was like, I don't know if I could do this. I don't know if I'm qualified. I don't have any experience in this area. And I was really feeling like down on myself. And I look across the gym and I make eye contact with this boy with Down syndrome. And I just smiled at him. He smiled back at me. And before I knew it, he was like running full speed across the whole gym, came to me, gave me a huge bear hug, and talked to me like I was a person. He could probably tell, okay, like, this girl's really nervous. She needs a hug. She needs a friend. And we just talked. We're like, oh, we realized we're both first timers. And it was that one single moment that I said, there's 100 other people in this room, and not one of them, not even my brother, sorry. He knows because I tell the story often. I love him to death. We're very close. But it's like, no one was like, hey, is Lauren okay? Like, maybe she needs to just someone to be like, is she all right? How you doing? But he saw that. Not only did he see it, but he did something about it. And he came over and he made the situation better. And that is how I want to be with everyone ever in my life. I want to be able to have that radar where I could see. It's almost like he even saw that I was like suffering too, and he wanted to make it better. And that's just kind of how I see my job as well. Like, because the reality is that these kids are sick, they're suffering, their families are suffering with the heart defect and all of that. And I want to be able to be genuine in my approach and kind of see that in others and alleviate that and bring joy and bring love to a situation that otherwise wouldn't have it. And so I always share that story because I love that kid, and everyone knows who knows me. They're like, it was him at camp that he's the reason why I do anything, really. And every child after that is just like, oh, he reminds me so much of this camper. And like, I see him in a lot of our kids, which is so beautiful. But he's such a joy. He is one of the funniest people I've ever met. And we developed such a beautiful friendship since then. So it's really awesome.
Well, what a great gift, because I think in that moment you didn't know anything about Down syndrome.
No.
But what you did know was the one person who helped you was the person with Down syndrome. And I don't think that's what everybody sees. I don't think that's the experience everyone has. Most of the time when you talk about any disability, the mindset is I have to help this person. This person is less than me. This person is weak. But it's not. It's just, like I said, if I really looked inside, I could say, where do I need help? But your first experience was that this person helped you. So I think there's ingrained in you an equality that I don't think many people get to experience. And that thing that you're talking about, presence, and it's a love that's without an agenda. And I see it took me almost 11 years to pin it down, because there was something. And like I told you, like I would really fight against when people would say he was an angel and like all only those good things, like almost to the point of like, no,
He's human.
right? He's a human. But that wasn't what was given. And so what then happens, like with anything, and I have to say I was probably acting like my 13-year-old daughter, like what happens with anything, if people are like trying to push something on you, whatever is true about that, it's hard. You don't want to see any of it because it comes with so much more. But what I have been able to realize in this last year, it's his presence, and it's a love without an agenda. And I think everybody would be so much better off with that, because, this young man saw you in pain and came over and comforted you. And that's the same thing Liam will do. Like Liam can tell. And I think we all can tell, but we all are like, oh,
We think of, what if I do that? What if I'm rejected as something?
am I
What if
being too
make some-
pushy? Am I
Oh,
helping
totally.
too much? Am I asking? Am I trying?
Not
But
to
he
overthink,
doesn't.
just to naturally go what
Go
your gut
over
is
and
telling
say,
you.
and I'd love to hear that conversation. And also I absolutely love that you're 17 and I don't know how old he was. I'm guessing you said around the same age, that you're having a conversation, because this is inclusion. That's an inclusive model, that you have two peers. And I love that. And I love
you're
the
learning from
conversation.
each other.
And you're learning from each other, because that's what, like that one little moment is the definition of inclusion. And it's powerful. And look at how it changed the world. I mean, look at what it planted in you. And
Not just 35 lives, hearts, but go back to the ripple effect, right?
There it is. Yeah, if I would have never gone to that camp, this would have never happened. So I should thank my brother, because he's the reason I went. Thanks for ignoring me and just leaving me there. But this would have never happened if he didn't do that. So
do you want to mention the camp?
absolutely. So this is the Mid-Hudson Valley Camp in Esopus, New York, and it's run by the Maris brothers. And it's a wonderful camp. Like I said, it literally changed my life. And it is probably the happiest place on earth. Well, I've never been to Disney, so I can't compare. But to me, like, it's exactly what you just described. It's inclusion. It's love. You're not judged for anything. And yeah, it's love without an agenda. And it's just like one of the most beautiful places ever. And we just have such an amazing time. I still go back to the camp when I can. Life is very crazy right now, but I will always, always be grateful and give my thanks where it's due, that my life would not be what it is if it wasn't for that. And if I didn't learn those lessons there, and if I didn't meet those people, and I'm super grateful for that. We'll always be in debt to camp.
Let's talk about what your organization does here in the United States.
We work with mothers who get the prenatal diagnosis of Down syndrome and a heart defect, or just Down syndrome, and we help provide resources for them. So usually this is individuals that are deemed as like crisis pregnancies, so they don't have much support. Maybe they don't have families that support them, or they don't have a partner or a spouse that is supporting them in this pregnancy. And so often people get referred to us. And so we will walk alongside them through this journey. We'll go to every doctor's appointment with them, every sonogram, every cardiology appointment, and then we'll work to connect them with a hospital here in the States. Thankfully, most people have insurance. And so it's a matter of us connecting them and helping provide that resource for them, and getting a surgical team that will operate on the child, and then planning the surgery and planning a birth plan. And I mean, we've thrown baby showers for our moms because most of them really don't have any other support. So it's our staff and the people that are working alongside us to celebrate this child. Sometimes too, we will connect them to other families that have children with Down syndrome, whether that's in the area or if they want to talk to them over the phone. We'll like arrange like little play dates, because I think that that's, like you said, like we were talking about before, like that education piece and just learning the reality of what this means. It's a really good way to like meet a family who's experienced that. Sometimes we'll try to like pair them up if the family speaks Spanish, or if the child's a boy, or if the child's a girl. Like we kind of ask them like, who would you like to be connected to? Because we have a huge community of people. And just me, I have so many personal friends, and a lot of my friends have adopted children with Down syndrome or had children with Down syndrome. And so I'm always connecting families and people to people. And it's just that's such a beautiful thing. And it's so valuable to a mother who's maybe scared and doesn't know what to expect, to be able to talk to another mom who's been there, and also to see the child and get like a real understanding of the reality of what that's going to be.
As a person that was uneducated about Down syndrome, but had a complete support group, it was a difficult time. So I can only imagine if you don't have anywhere to turn and you don't know anything about the situation, just where your mind can go.
Yeah, I want to hear about what do you do for the baby shower? Because that is something
that brought a smile to your face.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we would ask the mom kind of what do they need. We have like a standard, like we made an Amazon wish list for like kind of like a standard what somebody would need for a baby. And then we can alter it if the mother needs something in particular, depending on where she lives, if she even has room for a huge crib, or we kind of like cater it to the person. And it's crazy because with one of our moms, I'll never forget, we put the Amazon wish list out on like a Monday, and by Friday, and I mean like there was like 25 items, maybe more. And I'm talking like a changing table, a crib, like these are pretty big items. By Friday, everything was completely bought. And so we have it all delivered to us, and then we wrap everything. And then we usually try to surprise them. It's not always feasible. But we were able to pull it off to surprise this one mom, and she was just so grateful, and it was beautiful. And then what you do at a standard baby shower, like you play games, you ask questions about the baby, and you open the gifts, you have cake. I mean, like we try to go all out just because I love doing that, to make the person feel celebrated. And we have supporters and donors in every arena. Like we had someone who owned a chocolate shop, so she donated like desserts, and then we had someone donate a cake, and it just like, it was beautiful. And I was like blown away by the amount of people that donated so quickly to the Amazon wish list to be able to help the mom. So it's really beautiful. People do want to help. They just don't know how to. And so we're able to also give people the platform to really do something to change someone's life. Like you need a crib if you're going to have a baby, you need diapers and baby wipes. And this is like a tangible way to do that. Something else we do for our patients like abroad is we have care packages. So it's a little similar to that. We have an Amazon wish list for that as well, which is like baby supplies and different things for the actual hospital stay for the child. So that's another way people could help if they feel so compelled to checking out our Amazon wish list or donating so that we could purchase those items.
I think that with the baby shower, what makes me so happy is that when we receive a diagnosis, the first thing that is taken away is our celebration.
Yes, the joy.
Yeah, the joy is taken away. The way the doctors deliver the news, as if it's
the way the family can react,
the way friends and family can react, and the first thing that happens is our joy is gone. The joy that, or it's attempted to be gone. There's like this weight put upon it, and so I think that is the best way that you can support a mom is by helping her to celebrate. Like that is such a beautiful start, because you're changing the mindset, because the mindset isn't just the worry that's really would be there with any pregnancy, but that worry isn't just the only memory that we're going to have. We're going to have a celebration. And I want to get that. I want to find out about that wish list and talk more about baby showers. I think we should have a baby shower episode, because I think that should be, there should be a way. It goes back
to Melissa Kanock, remember?
Yes, she had a baby shower, and she also handed her friends and family informational brochures. This is what Down syndrome is. Mm-hmm. This is what it means. These are ways you
This is
talk
the way
about
we're
people
gonna
with
talk.
Down
Yeah.
syndrome. This is how we talk. This is what our expectations. This is education. This is, we give out that information, and you wouldn't normally hand out pamphlets at your
Right.
baby shower, but people
Well,
have
because
questions,
people know things,
and
but
then
they
we
don't-
have a
this is-
conversation, and then it's not people feel weird talking to us or they don't know what to say. Instead of a goodie bag with like wrapped almonds, you just give them this information.
You can throw the almonds in too.
And you could throw the almonds in. but in all seriousness, I think that's like such a beautiful way to, get the information out there, because the information should be out there. It should be the correct information that's given by the medical profession. It should be a different perception, but it's not. So we can't just sit and
Wait for it to happen,
and
right?
we can make it happen though, right? Even if it's just our circle, and then it gets bigger and bigger. So I think I really do want to have a baby shower episode.
Well, and to start that response to the diagnosis and that you're having a baby with congratulations. We've talked about that too, just that word congratulations. And this is a way to say it as a community to the person. You're having a baby. The baby has Down syndrome. Congratulations.
Yeah, because they don't hear that from the doctors, or like you said, they don't hear that enough. That's definitely our approach as well, is to celebrate, like, yeah, you're having a baby. This is a beautiful gift.
So I wanted to transition a little better. You were talking about how you got on this path and how you were impacted so much and how glad you were to be on this path. And I wanted to say how we're very happy that this is the path that you're on as well, because you're making quite an impact.
I really appreciate that. It's been a real blessing and a gift. So thank you.
Lauren, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. This was wonderful. It was so great to meet you both. Thank you.
Please follow us on Twitter at If We Knew Then Pod, and you can drop us a line on our Facebook page at If We Knew Then Pod, or visit our website, ifweknewthen.com, to send us an email with questions and comments. And you can join our mailing list there and get alerts of future podcast episodes. All these links will be added to this episode's show notes. Thank you again, and we look forward to you joining us on the next episode of If We Knew Then.
Thank you.